April 15th, 1943. 20,000 feet over the French coast near Dieppe. The leather glove gripping the control stick tightened as Major Donald Blakesley spotted the distinctive silhouette breaking through the cloud layer below. After weeks of frustrating training flights and mechanical problems with the new Republic P-47 Thunderbolts, the 4th Fighter Group was finally meeting the enemy. The massive American fighters, which British pilots had mockingly called 7-ton milk bottles, were about to prove their worth. Through his gun sight, Blakesley tracked a Focke-Wulf 190 of JG-26 Schlageter, unaware that he was about to make history. At 300 yards, he pressed the firing button. 8 Browning AN/M 2.50 caliber machine guns erupted simultaneously, each firing at 800 rounds per minute. The combined firepower, 6,400 rounds per minute theoretical rate, sent a concentrated stream of armor-piercing incendiary ammunition into the German fighter. The Focke-Wulf, pride of the Luftwaffe with its 220mm MG, 151/20 cannons and two 7.92mm MG 17 machine guns, disintegrated in seconds. This was the P-47's first aerial victory, marking the beginning of a transformation in aerial combat doctrine. The Americans hadn't just built a fighter, they had created an airborne weapons platform that would redefine firepower through industrial abundance. The story began months before that first victory. The P-47's first operational mission had occurred on March 10, 1943, when the 4th Fighter Group flew a fighter sweep over France. Radio malfunctions plagued this initial sortie, forcing a return to base and installation of British radio equipment. Throughout early 1943, the 4th Fighter Group, formerly the RAF's Eagle squadrons, struggled with the transition from nimble Spitfires to the massive P-47s. The Thunderbolt weighed 12,731 pounds empty, reaching 17,500 pounds fully loaded, more than twice the weight of a Messerschmitt Bf-109G. Republic Aviation's factory in Farmingdale, New York, was producing these giants at unprecedented rates. By April 1943, Republic was completing one P-47 every 4 hours, with production accelerating monthly. Alexander Kartveli, the Georgian-born chief designer, had approached fighter design with a philosophy that seemed absurd to European engineers. Maximum firepower delivered through maximum production. Where German designers agonized over weight savings measured in grams, Kartveli added guns, ammunition, and armor plate. Colonel Hubert Zemke, who commanded the 56th Fighter Group, understood the American approach. His unit had arrived in England in January 1943, and by April was flying combat missions. The 56th would become the only 8th Air Force Fighter Group to fly P-47s exclusively throughout the war, eventually claiming 674 aerial victories. The mathematics of the P-47's firepower were straightforward. Early P-47C and P-47D models carried 350 rounds per gun, 2,800 rounds total. The 8 guns, arranged 4 per wing, created a convergence zone at 250 yards where all bullet streams intersected. Within this zone, the concentration of firepower exceeded anything previously seen in single-engine fighter combat. A 1-second burst delivered 107 half-inch projectiles, each travelling at 2,840 feet per second. Luftwaffe intelligence initially dismissed reports of the P-47's armament. 8 heavy machine guns on a single-engine fighter seemed technically impossible. German fighter doctrine emphasized efficiency, the minimum armament necessary to destroy enemy aircraft, conserving weight for performance. The Focke-Wulf 190A5, the primary Luftwaffe fighter in Western Europe during spring 1943, carried 2 7.92mm MG 17 machine guns with 1,000 rounds each and 2 20mm MG 151/20 cannons with 250 rounds each in the wing roots. While the 20mm explosive shells were individually more destructive than .50 caliber bullets, The limited ammunition supply of 500 cannon rounds required precise marksmanship. German pilots had developed attack techniques based on ammunition conservation, short, precise bursts at close range. This philosophy had served well against British Spitfires and Hurricanes, which typically carried 8.303 rifle-caliber machine guns, or combinations of machine guns and cannons with limited ammunition. Following Blakesley's first victory on April 15th, encounters between P-47s and German fighters increased rapidly. On April 17th, P-47s of the 4th Fighter Group flew their first bomber escort mission, though range limitations with early drop tank configurations forced an early return. The psychological impact on German pilots was immediate. The 8 guns created a visual effect unlike anything previously encountered. The P-47's standard ammunition loading sequence, 4 armor-piercing incendiary, M8, 1 tracer, M10, meant every 5th round glowed in flight, creating the appearance of a continuous beam of light rather than individual projectiles. By May 1943, the Luftwaffe's Rechlin Test Center was examining captured P-47 components. German engineers discovered that the Browning AN/M2 machine gun, though a 1933 design, had been refined through mass production to unprecedented reliability. Parts were truly interchangeable. Any component from any gun would fit perfectly in any other gun, a level of standardization German industry couldn't achieve. The ammunition feed system used disintegrating link belts that ejected cleanly from the aircraft. German fighters used either drum magazines limited to 60 to 200 rounds, or belt systems that retained links, adding weight and complexity. The American system's reliability meant pilots could, if necessary, fire their entire ammunition load in one continuous burst. The scale of American ammunition production stunned German analysts. By mid-1943, the 8th Air Force was flying 200-plus P-47 sorties daily, with each aircraft carrying 2,800 rounds and pilots typically expending 60% of their ammunition. This meant approximately 336,000 rounds fired daily, more than the entire German fighter force in France received weekly. The Lake City Army ammunition plant in Missouri had reached production capacity of 1.6 billion rounds annually by 1943. This single facility outproduced Germany's entire small arms ammunition industry. The plant operated continuously with 20,000 workers in shifts, maintaining quality control that rejected any round varying more than 0.001 inches from specifications. Republic Aviation's production was equally impressive. The Farmingdale plant covered 765,000 square feet, with additional production at Evansville, Indiana. Combined output reached over 400 P-47s monthly by late 1943, while German fighter production of all types struggled to exceed 1,000 monthly. German fighter doctrine emphasized lightweight, maneuverable aircraft. The Messerschmitt Bf-109G6 weighed 6,940 pounds fully loaded. The Focke-Wulf 190A-5 reached 9,040 pounds. The P-47C weighed 13,500 pounds loaded. The P-47D reached 14,500 pounds, impossibly heavy by German standards. Yet the P-47's Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, producing 2,000 horsepower initially and 2,300 in later models, provided competitive power-to-weight ratios. The weight provided stability as a gun platform and ability to absorb tremendous damage. The General Electric turbo supercharger system weighed 845 pounds alone, nearly the entire armament weight allowance on German fighters. But it maintained full power at 30,000 feet, altitudes where the BMW 801 radial engine in the FW190 lost significant power above 20,000 feet. The shock of facing P-47 firepower forced immediate Luftwaffe tactical changes. Traditional attack methods became suicidal when P-47s were present. American fighters didn't need optimal firing position. Their volume of fire created kill zones. German fighters couldn't survive crossing. Luftwaffe units developed new tactics emphasizing the FW-190's superior roll rate and turning ability at low altitude. But reaching low altitude required diving through the P-47's fire envelope. American pilots learned to use altitude advantage and firepower to force German fighters into unfavorable positions. The contrast in ammunition philosophy was stark. German pilots entered combat with 60 to 90 seconds of firing time. P-47 pilots had 30 to 35 seconds of continuous fire available. This disparity created fundamental tactical differences. Germans conserved ammunition while Americans fired liberally. August 17, 1943, the first Schweinfurt-Regensburg mission, demonstrated both P-47 capabilities and limitations. Within escort range, P-47s devastated German interceptors. The 56th Fighter Group alone claimed 17 victories without loss. But P-47 range, even with 75-gallon belly tanks, limited escort to roughly 375 miles from base. German tactics evolved to exploit this limitation. Luftwaffe controllers waited until P-47s departed before launching attacks. The resulting bomber losses, 60 B-17s, highlighted the need for longer range. But within the P-47's protective envelope, bomber losses approached zero. Introduction of 108-gallon and later 150-gallon drop tanks progressively extended range. By October 1943, P-47s could escort bombers 425 miles from base. Each extension meant German fighters had to wait longer and fly farther before engaging. The infrastructure supporting P-47 operations reached industrial scales that defied German comprehension. Each P-47 squadron maintained reserves of 500,000 rounds. Forward airfields in England stockpiled millions of rounds. Supply ships delivered ammunition continuously from American factories. A typical P-47 group possessed enough ammunition for 30 days of maximum intensity operations without resupply. German fighter units operated on 3-day reserves, often less. American pilots fired liberally while German pilots counted every round. Maintenance supplies showed similar disparity. American depots maintained complete replacement engines, gun sets, and major components. Damaged P-47s could be rebuilt from spare parts in days. German units cannibalized damaged aircraft for parts, reducing operational strength even when airframes could theoretically be repaired. October 14, 1943, Black Thursday, the second Schweinfurt raid marked a turning point. While P-47s flew escort to maximum range, claiming 21 German fighters, bombers faced devastating attacks after escorts departed. German pilot reports revealed growing concern about engaging P-47s. The mathematics were irrefutable. A German fighter squadron, Staffel, of 12 aircraft might possess 7,000 rounds total of mixed calibers. A single P-47 squadron of 16 aircraft carried 44,800 rounds of heavy machine gun ammunition, with millions more in reserve. The firepower advantage was amplified by training differences. American P-47 pilots arrived in combat with 400-plus flight hours, including 100-plus hours of gunnery training. They had fired thousands of practice rounds at targets. German pilot training by late 1943 averaged 110 flight hours before combat, with perhaps 20 hours of gunnery training. Fuel shortages meant many German pilots entered combat having fired their guns only a few times. They faced American pilots who had expended more ammunition in training than German pilots would fire in their entire combat careers. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gaby Gabreski, who would become the leading P-47 ace in Europe with 28 victories, described the tactical reality. "We didn't need to be better shots. We needed to put our sight on them and hold the trigger down. 850s did the rest." By November 1943, P-47 groups began emphasizing ground attack after escort duties. The 8.50 caliber guns proved devastating against locomotives, vehicles, and parked aircraft. Armor-piercing incendiary ammunition could penetrate locomotive boilers and vehicle armor. A single P-47 could destroy an entire train in one pass. The standard attack profile involved a 30-degree dive, opening fire at 1,000 yards, walking rudder pedals to spray bullets across the target, pulling out at 200 feet. In 10 seconds, a P-47 could deliver 800 to 1,000 rounds into a target area 100 yards long. German transportation networks faced systematic destruction. P-47S destroyed locomotives faster than German industry could replace them. By December 1943, German units avoided rail movement during daylight due to P-47 interdiction. The P-47's role in the strategic bombing campaign proved crucial. While the P-51 Mustang would eventually assume the long-range escort role, P-47s provided the initial shield that allowed the bomber offensive to continue despite heavy losses. By early 1944, improved P-47D variants carried 425 rounds per gun, 3,400 rounds total. The P-47D-25 introduced a bubble canopy, paddle blade propeller, and provisions for rockets in addition to guns. These improvements maintained the P-47's combat effectiveness even as German fighters improved. June 6, 1944, D-Day provided the ultimate demonstration. P-47S flew 2,398 sorties, claiming 84 German aircraft destroyed in air and 89 on ground. More significantly, they paralyzed German ground movement through interdiction. The Luftwaffe managed only 319 sorties over Normandy on D-Day. Americans flew over 13,000. German fighters over Normandy possessed perhaps 200,000 rounds total. American fighters carried millions of rounds with unlimited resupply. P-47S created free fire zones where anything moving was destroyed. Vehicle columns were reduced to burning wreckage in single passes. The distinctive whistling sound of diving P-47s, air flowing through gun ports and cooling ducts, became a terror weapon. By late 1944, German fighter production actually peaked at 25,000 annually. But fuel shortages, pilot losses, and overwhelming Allied numerical superiority meant most never flew operationally. Those that did faced odds exceeding 10 to 1. The Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter provided speed advantage but not firepower superiority. Its 430mm Mk-108 cannons carried only 80 to 100 rounds per gun, 360 rounds total. While devastating against bombers, limited ammunition and low muzzle velocity made them less effective against fighters. The P-47N, introduced for Pacific operations, carried 550 gallons internal fuel. This single-seat fighter carried more fuel than German medium bombers, demonstrating American industrial capability to build aircraft that defied conventional limitations. Final production numbers tell the story. Total P-47 production, 15,683 aircraft. Peak monthly production, over 400 aircraft, combined plants. Total FW-190 production, approximately 20,000, all variants 1941 to 1945. FW-190 fighter variants, approximately 13,000. Each P-47 was fully equipped with 8 guns and adequate ammunition. German fighters increasingly flew with reduced armament due to shortages. By 1945, some FW-190s operated with only 2 cannons instead of 4 to conserve ammunition. Republic Aviation's facilities covered over 1 million square feet of production space. German fighter production operated from frequently bombed facilities with dispersed production reducing efficiency. Lake City Army Ammunition Plant alone produced 1.6 billion rounds annually. Combined with other facilities, Frankfurt Arsenal, Des Moines Ordnance Plant, Twin Cities Ordnance Plant, American production exceeded 10 billion rounds of .50 caliber ammunition during the war. German ammunition production for all aircraft weapons totaled approximately 4 billion rounds, including all calibers combined. Americans produced more rounds of their single heavy machine gun caliber than Germany produced of all aircraft ammunition types together. Quality control differed dramatically. American ammunition underwent multiple inspections with 2 to 3% rejection rates. German production, increasingly relying on slave labor and substitute materials, experienced higher malfunction rates that reduced effective firepower. The U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey documented P-47 achievements in Europe: 3,916 enemy aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 3,202 enemy aircraft destroyed on ground, 9,000 locomotives destroyed, 86,000 railway cars destroyed, 68,000 motor vehicles destroyed, 6,000 armoured fighting vehicles destroyed. These statistics represent strategic impact beyond tactical success. Transportation infrastructure destruction by P-47s significantly reduced Wehrmacht mobility and logistics. The Luftwaffe's inability to counter P-47 ground attacks meant American air power operated with near impunity. American pilots who completed 25 mission tours, later extended to 35, then 50, rotated home to train new pilots. German pilots flew until killed, captured, or incapacitated. By late 1944, most Luftwaffe pilots were novices facing American veterans. The experience gap widened continuously. American training programs incorporated combat lessons immediately. German training, disrupted by fuel shortages and abbreviated by necessity, produced pilots with varying skill levels facing standardized American tactics. Beyond firepower, P-47s incorporated technologies enhancing effectiveness. The turbo supercharger allowed full power at extreme altitudes. The R-2800's reliability meant consistent performance with 400-hour intervals between overhauls. The K-14 gunsight, introduced late 1944, computed deflection automatically using gyroscopic principles. Pilots simply framed targets and fired. German fighters used reflector sights requiring manual deflection estimates. Gun heating systems prevented freezing at altitude. P-47 guns functioned reliably at 40,000 feet in -60 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. German fighters frequently experienced gun freezing above 25,000 feet, particularly wing-mounted weapons. American abundance extended to maintenance. P-47 groups maintained extensive spare parts, complete engines, gun sets, propellers. Ground crews could completely re-engine aircraft overnight. Battle damage requiring weeks of German repairs was fixed in days. German maintenance became increasingly problematic. Spare parts shortages meant cannibalization. By late 1944, Luftwaffe serviceability dropped below 50%. American P-47 groups maintained 85% serviceability rates routinely. American crew chiefs were trained specialists with extensive technical education. German ground crews, depleted by conscription, increasingly consisted of foreign workers and Hitler youth with minimal training. P-47s burned 100/130 grade aviation fuel, allowing higher manifold pressures and increased power. German synthetic fuel from coal provided inconsistent octane ratings, reducing performance and reliability. By late 1944, German fighters received 30 to 50 gallons per sortie when available. P-47s routinely carried 370 gallons internally plus external tanks. American pilots flew multiple daily missions while Germans were grounded by fuel shortages. German pilots knew aggressive maneuvering consumed precious fuel needed for return. American pilots flew without fuel anxiety, enabling aggressive tactics Germans couldn't match. The P-47 represented American industrial philosophy, overwhelming quantity of sufficient quality. Where Germans pursued technical perfection in limited quantities, Americans pursued adequate performance in unlimited quantities. Kartvelli's design prioritized producibility over optimization. The P-47 was easier to manufacture than German fighters despite greater complexity. Standardization and mass production meant faster production at lower cost. This philosophy extended throughout the supply chain. The same .50 caliber rounds fired by P-47s were used by bombers, ground vehicles, and naval vessels. This simplified logistics while achieving economies of scale impossible with diverse calibers. German attempts to match American firepower proved futile. The FW-190A-8, introduced February 1944, could carry additional cannons in underwing pods, but added weight and drag severely degraded performance. The Sturmbock variant, optimized for bomber destruction with heavy armor and 30mm cannons, was helpless against escort fighters. The fundamental problem was industrial capacity. Germany could not simultaneously fight a multi-front war and match American production. Attempting to do so only accelerated resource exhaustion. Beyond physical destruction, P-47s achieved psychological victory. The distinctive whistle of diving P-47s became a terror weapon. German soldiers developed persistent anxiety about P-47 attacks, diving for cover at any aircraft sound. American pilots understood their psychological advantage. They flew with confidence from unlimited resources. German pilots flew with desperation from scarcity. This mental state affected tactical decisions, with Germans increasingly avoiding combat unless necessary. The P-47 achieved a 4.6-to-1 kill ratio in over 746,000 sorties. While 3,499 P-47s were lost to all causes, this represented less than 0.5% loss rate per sortie. German fighter units suffered 50% monthly casualties by late 1944. The 56th Fighter Group, flying only P-47s throughout the war, became the top-scoring American fighter group in Europe, with 674 aerial victories. This demonstrated that supposed P-47 limitations were overcome by firepower, durability, and pilot skill. The P-47's 8.50 caliber guns represented more than firepower. They embodied American industrial philosophy triumphant. Each gun required precision manufacturing and complex supply chains. That America could mount 8 per fighter with ammunition to sustain them demonstrated industrial supremacy transcending military calculations. Military historians recognize P-47 firepower as decisive in achieving air superiority over Europe. The ability to deliver overwhelming firepower at extended ranges broke the Luftwaffe's defensive capability. Once air superiority was achieved, Allied victory became inevitable. The P-47's influence extended beyond World War II. It established principles dominating modern air combat: firepower superiority through volume of fire, standardization enabling mass production, and industrial capacity determining military capability. Modern fighters carrying rotary cannons firing 6,000 rounds per minute are direct descendants of the P-47's philosophy. Precision-guided munitions represent evolution, not rejection, of the firepower principle, another form of overwhelming force through industrial superiority. When West Germany rebuilt its air force in the 1950s, it adopted American equipment, tactics, and doctrine. German pilots trained on American aircraft, fired American ammunition, absorbed American philosophy, the student learning from the master. While statistics tell the strategic story, individual accounts reveal the human dimension. Colonel Robert S. Johnson of the 56th Fighter Group survived an attack on June 26, 1943, that put over 200 bullet holes in his P-47. The aircraft absorbed damage that would have destroyed any German fighter, flying home with controls damaged and canopy shattered. Colonel Hubert Zemke, commanding the 56th Fighter Group, developed tactics maximizing P-47 advantages. His Zemke fan spread squadrons wide, creating overlapping fields of fire German fighters couldn't penetrate. Under his leadership, the 56th achieved remarkable success exclusively with P-47s. German pilot Heinz Knoke, author of I Flew for the Führer, described facing P-47s as confronting streams of tracers that seemed solid, making bomber approaches through escort screens impossible. His memoir provides valuable German perspective on American firepower superiority. Behind statistics were millions of American workers producing the arsenal of democracy. At Republic Aviation's Farmingdale plant, women comprised 40% of workforce by 1943. These workers built P-47s with precision exceeding peacetime standards, while maintaining unprecedented production rates. Lake City Ammunition Plant operated continuously, workers producing billions of rounds in climate-controlled facilities. Quality control inspectors, mostly women, rejected rounds varying slightly from specifications. Their dedication ensured American pilots never experienced ammunition failures plaguing German fighters. American workers earned good wages, lived comfortably, took pride in contribution. German production increasingly depended on forced labor in deteriorating conditions, resulting in sabotage and declining quality. The P-47 program cost approximately $1.3 billion in 1940s dollars. This represented massive investment in a single weapon system. Yet American industrial capacity made this affordable while simultaneously producing thousands of other aircraft, tanks, and ships. American mass production reduced unit costs continuously. Early P-47s cost over $100,000 each. By 1945, unit cost dropped to $83,000 despite increased capability. German fighter costs increased throughout the war as production dispersal and material shortages reduced efficiency. Post-war analysis revealed the gulf between American and German production methods. American factories used specialized machine tools, assembly line production, statistical quality control. German production retained craft methods unsuitable for mass production. The Browning M2's design facilitated mass production, simple, robust components manufactured by semi-skilled workers using automated machinery. German weapons required skilled craftsmen using traditional methods. This fundamental difference meant America could expand production exponentially while Germany could not. The P-47's 8 guns represented synthesis of American advantages: industrial capacity, technological innovation, logistical excellence, and training superiority. No single element was decisive. Their combination proved overwhelming. Industrial capacity provided the foundation, ability to produce fighters, guns, ammunition in vast quantities. Technology enabled effectiveness: turbo supercharging, reliable engines, precision manufacturing. Logistics delivered materials where needed. Training ensured pilots could exploit advantages. Germany possessed excellent pilots, innovative technology, tactical sophistication. But without industrial foundation to support them, these advantages proved insufficient. The Luftwaffe was defeated not by superior tactics, but by overwhelming material superiority, symbolized by 8 guns firing continuously. German pilots facing P-47 Thunderbolts learned harsh lessons about modern warfare. Their Focke-Wulf 19s, excellent fighters by traditional standards, were overwhelmed by American firepower delivered through industrial production. 8.50 caliber machine guns, supplied with unlimited ammunition, represented new warfare paradigms. The transformation from confidence through shock to acceptance mirrors Germany's larger World War II experience. Initial tactical superiority based on innovation and skill crumbled against American mass production and material abundance. The P-47, initially dismissed as too heavy, proved that industrial might could overcome tactical disadvantages. German pilots were stunned not just by 8 guns firing in unison, but by what those guns represented: a nation producing unlimited weapons, ammunition, and aircraft. The FW-190 might have been better in traditional terms, but traditional terms had become obsolete. The P-47's 850s rewrote air combat rules through industrial power. The legacy endures in every modern fighter, emphasizing firepower over finesse, every massive munitions expenditure, every industrial approach to military challenges. All trace lineage to the moment German pilots first encountered 8 synchronized Browning machine guns and realized their entire understanding of air combat was obsolete. The P-47 Thunderbolt didn't just outgun the Focke-Wulf 190, it outproduced, outsupplied, and ultimately outthought German aviation philosophy through overwhelming firepower delivered by industrial democracy. The 8 guns weren't merely weapons, they were messengers of American industrial might. Every burst demonstrated production capabilities Nazi Germany could never match. The thunderous roar of 8 synchronized Brownings became the sound of inevitable Allied victory, a sound that echoed from the factories of America to the skies over Europe, forever changing the nature of aerial warfare.